Hey guys, welcome back to Unclear on Tour. Thanks for joining us. If it's your first time, then don't worry about it. The room I'm in has always looked like this. And if you're coming back, you know that that's a lie. And the room I'm recording in never looks like this. But those are just the kind of twists and turns that have been occupying my mind as of late. I'm on this latest leg of my tour, staying in a new apartment. As you can see, I've got new furniture, new walls, new greenery, just keeping it fresh always. Hot content for you guys. But also for myself, traveling around, seeing people, seeing friends, and feeling lots of ways about those friends and the seeing of those friends and the places that I'm seeing them in and all those kind of fun, experiences to go through. It is ultimately a very emotional time to come back to a place that you lived for sort of 5 years straight, and then a crazy thing happened to the whole world, but also to everyone individually. And for that and other reasons, you haven't seen each other in a long time, and you catch up, as I was talking about last time, whatever, talking about catching up and going over the same stories and anecdotes. And, that's fun. And we discussed the feeling of sort of disassociation and disorientation that comes from kind of telling this story over and over again. And the truth is that, that's obviously one experience to have. And that's one kind of story to tell. But there are many different emotions that come along with seeing people for the first time in a while. Usually, happiness and gratitude, but also, that familiar feeling of kind of coming home, and feeling welcome and feeling welcomed and feeling among your people. And for that feeling, I'm just incredibly grateful. I've seen lots of people who I love dearly, done lots of things that I love to do when I live here in Canada. So, yeah, I'm feeling extremely grateful. And it feels especially like a prize well earned, after all the stress of leading up to this moment, all the planning that went into this inaugural tour for the podcast. It's finally come to roost, and here I am enjoying the spoils of all those Google Docs and email threads and other such sort of organizational tools. Here I am in amongst it, and this is the, like I say, this is the prize that we were working towards the whole time, right? Was being here, being amongst it, seeing people, seeing friends, and doing the more boring administrative things that, I was motivated to come here to do. But, that was one task off the list. And we're getting to see people. And like I say, we've been catching up, deja vu, and now we're getting deja vu because I'm repeating myself. But I want to talk about more like, those are the things you expect. And planning and the enjoyment and the payoff of planning is all about the fact that that's how it goes down. You plan for something to happen, you research how that might go down, you put everything in that basket or several baskets to hedge your bets. And for me, at least, as a very anxious person, I agonize over the details. I get lost in the planning stage itself because I feel like if I lose any detail or forget any possible edge case scenario that could occur, then that's the one that's going to mess me up, right? If I'm really focused there's a lot of travel going on, if I'm really focused on, say, packing my bag, what I'm most fearful of is turning up to the airport and my passport being out of date. The thing that slips your mind is the thing that gets you. And so I spend a lot of my time fretting about, what is the thing that I might have forgotten? Which, of course, is a dreadful, bottomless exercise to get into. What is the thing that I might have forgotten? The answer is, of course, literally anything, because you've forgotten. And yet, dear listener, that is the exercise I treat myself to most regularly in these times of high stress and high, as I say, planning. But what's different is when things happen that you weren't expecting. And if you are a friend of the show, then of course you know what I'm referring to. But let's keep it general. Let's keep it ambiguous, so that we can provide a morale or a moral even, and a lesson for everybody. You can plan all you like, but it's the unexpected that is ultimately unexpected and comes for you and gets you and knocks you off your perch and makes you think, well, why the hell did I do any of that planning? Why did I do that preparation? Because this I couldn't have seen coming, or it was in one of those piles where, well, it's a possibility. It's not a complete miraculous fantasy, but it's not even worth entertaining, because the likelihood is not as likely as aforementioned passport incident, right? I really do worry about rocking up to the check-in desk and then just being like, yeah, that flight was yesterday. Or, you spelled your name wrong and we can't let you fly today, Robert. And just really silly, dumb mistakes is what I am concerned about. But it's the just left field stuff. And you know what it usually is? An act of God and an act of weather. And sometimes, forces beyond our control. And that's what flips the script and provides those unpredictable moments. And those are the things that you really have to actually prepare for, because those are the things that mess you up. And you hope that because you've done all this planning and all this preparation for whatever, for me at least, this next 6 months, I've been thinking about it. Well, what's this outcome? There's edge cases. So when something unexpected occurs, you're like, well, I've actually covered quite a lot of bases, so I hope I'm still within them. And maybe even it's a scenario where you can say, this is such an about face and such a turn of circumstance that maybe, in fact, things are now strangely and newly in my advantage. That's the dream scenario. But ultimately, you have to deal with the fact that, yes, you prepared, but you didn't prepare for this. But did you prepare generally that you can still survive this? And ultimately, can you just adapt? Yes, it was important to do all that planning, or at least it felt like it was at the time. But these are the circumstances now. So can you adapt? Can you update the path you're taking and take this on? And that is really tough, because I know that it's really important. And again, just being here, these last 3-4 weeks have just been crazy, and a lot of unexpected stuff has occurred. And it's just, are you ready for that? And are you ready to adapt? And are you ready to move forward? And because I'm sat here with you, dear listener, I'm going to give a semi-confident answer and say yes. Yes, I am. But I feel like what troubles me is ultimately people say you shouldn't worry about and you shouldn't be anxious about the things that you can't control. You know, these forces that are literally beyond your control, forces greater than you, more powerful than the person you are and it's impacting you, maybe more powerful than the person they are impacting and that second hand is affecting you. But just it's not within your power to change how and when those things occur. But I've always been so uncomfortable with that advice because, again, it is ultimately those surprises and shocks and those forces majeure that command, the decision that you have to make in the moment, and that decision has ramifications. And so the impact is massive, is what I'm trying to say. So it's crazy to say, oh, don't worry about it because you can't control it. Well, I'm worried about it because I have no control over something that has such a significant and monumental impact, potentially, probably, on my life. How can I not be concerned about that? And obviously it's correct that it's not productive to be genuinely anxious and just be like, anything could fuck me up at any moment. However, that is a genuine and not irrational fear. It is irrational to try and think that by worrying about it and knowing that anything could fuck me up at any moment and any surprise, any weather or market force could change the course of my life immediately. It's just like knowing believing that you can do anything about that is irrational, yes. But being fearful of the fact that anything could change at any moment, I don't believe is an irrational response, because it seems to me to be true. And what it does underline and undermine is that, like, here I am worrying about all these other things that I can control. And ultimately, yes, it was important to think about them. And yes, I'm glad I planned and prepared. But I went to such an extreme of planning and preparing and being anxious precisely because I believed these were the things that I could control. And so I was anxious and I was focused on these other things that I've been thinking about for the past 6 weeks, 8 weeks, longer, right? I've been so laser focused on them, and it's caused me a lot of anxiety and stress to think about them, all because my firm belief was these are the things that I can control. And to some extent, that is true, and to some extent, my planning was merited. But here I am, 2 weeks out, which is why this podcast is late, 2 weeks out from a decision that just like changed the course of my year, minimum, potentially longer than that. And here I am, having got off the phone. And sorry, the point being that what changed my life that 2 weeks ago, what changed the course of my life, at least in the short term, is completely out of my control and completely out of the control of the person who is directly impacted, and then the decision, came onto me as well, because we're sort of entangled in that sense. So it affected us both, him first, and it came from outside of our control, and it's in the friggin' news, Like if you read it in the news, you're like, oh, well, there's nothing I could have done about this. So you I can be placid in that moment and be like, oh, well, them's the breaks. But it doesn't change the fact that now I am thinking on my feet, adapting, doing the best with what I have, changing tack because of how much impact this had. And it came out of nowhere with no direct warning, even though, like I say, it's in the news and there's a general vibe. And I got off the phone with my brother this morning, and in a very abstract way, in a different way, but abstract way, same thing. He planned, he prepared, he spent years doing so, you know? And a change of the weather, extreme and due to climate change, but a change of the weather impacted so much what was going on for him that now the rest of his year has changed. The rest of his potential next several years has fundamentally shifted and changed tack. And the awesome kind of power of that is terrifying. Because again, like I know we're talking about climate change, that's obviously bigger fish there, but like we are talking about like weather, and we are talking about other just like news things that happen, general society items, right? And so when people say, oh, you shouldn't worry about the things that you can't control, what I'm hearing is you should be placid in the face of the awesome power of forces beyond your reckoning. And that's sort of strange advice to me, because whilst it helps, it's always better to be calm than too anxious, of course. And I have just the suddenness and the extremeness and the overwhelming power of these moments in life. You go, well, okay, and there is a placidness, there is a calmness to it, but it's still correct to be fearful of them, because of how much they change you and how much they come out of nowhere. It's just the definition of a surprise, and potentially an unexpected and unpleasant surprise. So I don't, but it's just so interesting to me that, like I say, I'm really abstracting the problem, but I'm just seeing it a lot and I'm contrasting it with, like I say, how anxious I've been over the past few months, and I could have never seen it coming what happened. So what's the takeaway? Should I not have worried about the other stuff as much? But that's the stuff that I can control, right? And so if I'm to take my therapist's advice literally, then if I don't worry about the things I can't control, then I should at least a little bit worry about the things that I can control. So I do, and I've given myself a stomach ulcer and lost weight and lost sleep. And then it's just something else. So I don't know what the takeaway is, and I don't know if that was a real episode or not, but that's very much what's on my mind. Just being in the churn of life, after the planning, in the activation and actualization phase, and just experiencing it and trying to be in the moment. And you're forced to be in the moment when things like this happen. So again, maybe that's the positive and the lack of worry that the professional help I've received over my life. Maybe that's what they're talking about, and maybe I should listen to them. And that's what I think the problem is.